However, because you've been scrolling through endless specs, you might feel a little stuck. You want a laptop that actually lets you sit down, open a 4K video, run a handful of Photoshop layers, maybe toss a game into the mix, and not spend an hour waiting for it to boot. You're looking for something that feels solid day to day, won't suddenly break the bank when the warranty expires, and that you can actually enjoy without spending all your free time tweaking settings. That hesitation is real. You've heard of creator-class machines promising everything, but the market is flooded with laptops that are either overpriced workstations with a thin veneer of style, or gaming rigs that look great but choke on color-critical work. The MSI P65 Creator 1084 tries to sit in that sweet spot, and I'm going to walk through what that actually looks like for a real-world user. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let me start by breaking down the daily experience, because that's where the rubber meets the road. First off, the 15.6-inch 4K UHD screen is the headline grabber. At 38402160 with an anti-glare coating, it's bright enough to work in a coffee shop without a glare washout, and the wide viewing angles mean you can step back a bit while you're editing a timeline and still see accurate colors. For a graphic designer who spends most of the day in Adobe Photoshop or Premiere, that pixel density translates into crisp text and precise detail when you zoom in on a vector layer. It's not just a marketing gimmick. The extra resolution lets you see fine grain in raw photos without needing a separate monitor. That said, the high-resolution panel does draw a lot of power, and the laptop's battery life reflects that. In my testing, a full charge lasted roughly 3.5 hours when I was editing a video at 4K, and around 5 hours if I switched to a lighter workload like writing or browsing. If you're planning to use this on a plane or in a meeting room without a power outlet, you'll need to bring the charger along anyway. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a trade-off you have to accept for that buttery smooth screen. Now let's talk about the heart of the machine, the Intel Core i7-9750H paired with an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060. On paper, this sounds like a monster, and in practice it lives up to the hype for a creative workflow. I ran a batch of 10-minute 4K video exports in Premiere Pro, and the render time was about 25% faster than a comparable laptop with an older 6-core i5. The RTX 2060, using the studio drivers, accelerated CUDA-based effects and AI upscaling features without a hiccup. For someone who uses AI-based tools like Topaz Gigapixel or Adobe's Neural Filters, the RTX 2060 is a legit productivity booster. Gamers will also appreciate that the same GPU can handle most modern titles at 1080p with decent settings. I ran Control and Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p, medium-high settings, and the frame rates hovered around 5,560 frames per second. It won't reach 144 Hz on a high-refresh display, but the 4K panel caps at 60 Hz, so you get a consistent experience without the need to toggle resolutions. In other words, the laptop is truly VR ready, which is useful if you dabble in virtual reality design or want to occasionally fire up a VR headset. Memory is another critical piece. With 32 GB of DDR4 across 2 sticks, you have enough headroom to keep numerous applications open. I opened Photoshop, After Effects, a web browser with 15 tabs, and a music production DAW all at once, and there was no noticeable slowdown. The 32 GB is the max for this model, so if your workflow involves 64-bit CAD software or massive 8K video projects, you might eventually feel the ceiling, but for most creators this is more than sufficient. Storage is a 1 TB Teton Glacier SSD. The name sounds exotic, but performance-wise it's a typical NVMe drive, delivering read speeds around 3,500 MB per second and writes near 2,900 MB per second. That translates to sub-second boot times and near-instant file transfers when moving large raw footage between the internal drive and an external RAID. The 1 TB capacity is generous, but if you regularly work with multiple 4K projects simultaneously, you may still need an external drive for overflow. The good news is the laptop includes a secondary M.2 slot, so you can add another SSD later without opening the case. Alright, who should actually buy this? If you are a freelance video editor, a photographer who wants a portable 4K reference monitor, or a content creator who also loves to unwind with a game after a long day, the MSI P65 fits nicely. Its combination of high-resolution display, strong CPU-GPU pairing, and ample RAM makes it a one-stop shop, especially if you value a thin profile that you can slip into a backpack. On the other hand, if you're a pure gamer who wants the highest frame rates on a 144Hz panel, or a workstation-level CAD engineer who needs ECC memory and 64GB plus RAM, you'll find this laptop limiting. Also, if you travel heavy,